our dear viewers, and welcome to a new edition of our program Africa Today. I'm Mahesti Rabia. Our dear viewers, in our episode today, we are going to talk about the Sudanese leader, General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, who sought to shore up a relation with Egypt on Tuesday as he made his first visit since the conflict in Sudan began. President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi met with his Sudanese counterpart in New El Alamein city. The two leaders discussed bilateral relations, and the Sudanese military leaders expressed Sudan's appreciation for Egypt's active role in the region.
The chairman of Sudan's Traditional Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, stressed on Tuesday that the Sudanese army forces only seek to end the ongoing war in Sudan and to complete the country's democratic transition. In a briefing following a meeting with President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in New Alamein, al-Burhan said that the Sudanese army is committed to establishing a genuine transitional period, enabling the Sudanese people to establish a government via free and fair elections. He also denied what he termed lies that the army has become an incubator for the former regime or for terrorist groups. He asserted that Sudanese army forces are patriotic forces that have no intention to seize power or continue to rule Sudan. Al-Burhan said he came to Egypt to brief the country's leadership on the latest developments in Sudan, marking his first trip outside the country since the conflict began. The Sudanese general called upon the world to view the war objectively and correctly, noting that this war was started by a group that wanted to seize power, and to achieve that, it has committed every heinous crime, including murder, displacement, and looting. The Sudanese leader also thanked the Egyptian people and government for welcoming Sudanese refugees into Egypt following the outbreak of the war. For his part, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi affirmed Egypt's solidarity with Sudan and support for its security, stability, unity, and territorial integrity, especially during the current crisis. He also highlighted the eternal ties and the common strategic interests that unite the two countries, according to a statement issued by the presidency following the meeting. The meeting also followed up on goals set at Sudan's neighboring countries summit, which has held recently in Egypt. Egypt has repeatedly called for halting the hostilities in Sudan, urging the warring parties to engage in serious talks aimed at achieving an immediate and lasting ceasefire.
Our dear viewers, till we tackle the situation in Sudan in our coverage for that today, we move to Ethiopia, where the UN Human Rights Office announced on Tuesday that at least 183 people have been killed as a result of the ongoing fighting between Ethiopia's military and insurgents in the Amhara region. The UN statement noted that over 1,000 people have been arrested across the country, underscoring that the majority of them are youngsters. More details in the following story.
The United Nations announced on Tuesday that at least 183 people have been killed since July in clashes in the Ethiopian state of Amhara, which has been plagued by violence for several weeks. The United Nations Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights also expressed concern about the human rights situation in the country since a state of emergency was declared at the beginning of August, citing reports of mass arrests. Amhara, Ethiopia's second most populous state, has been the scene of armed violence since April, triggered by the federal government's desire to disband the Amhara Special Forces. The federal government declared a state of emergency on the 4th of August after fresh fighting in early July between the federal army and Amhara fighters. Marta Hurtado, spokeswoman for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, said that they are very concerned about the deterioration of the human rights situation in certain regions of Ethiopia, stressing that the state of emergency gives the authorities wide powers. She detailed that it allows them to arrest suspects without a court order, impose curfews, and ban public gatherings. She added that they have received reports that more than 1,000 people have been arrested throughout Ethiopia under this law. Tensions in Amhara have increased since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed announced that he wanted to dismantle the special forces, paramilitary units set up by a number of regional states to protect the people of Amhara.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi received on Tuesday the chairman of Sudan Transitional Sovereignty Council, Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, at New El Alamein city, stressing Egypt's incessant support for the security, stability, and the unity as well as the safety of Sudan. To shed more light, we are very much delighted to be joined over the phone by Ambassador Gamal Baioumy, former Assistant Foreign Minister. Ambassador Baioumy.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, Sudan's army chief traveled Tuesday to Egypt on his first trip abroad since the outbreak of the conflict there. How do you weigh the Egyptian role in reaching settlement to the Sudanese crisis, sir?
When we study the foreign policy of Egypt, we divide it into circles. The first circle, of course, is the neighborhood and the Arabs, then Africa, then Europe, then Asia. But if we come to the absolute most important country to us, it's Sudan. It's not only a neighbor or a brother country. It was part of us. Egypt was part of Sudan.
Indeed,
I
yes.
am of the generation who saluted one flag during my school days and even up to the university. So Sudan is very dear country to us. That's why we do not feel that we have 4 or 5 million Sudanese living among us without being treated as guests or foreign migrants. They are here to be treated as an individual Egyptian citizen. Here we have a problem which is a little bit complicated in Sudan, that Sudan again, after it separated itself from Egypt, it was divided into two Sudans, North Sudan and South Sudan, and each one of them is fighting among their own people, and it is threatened to more division in the North and in the South. Here with the North, the problem is between tribes and between parties. Most important that it is between different generals of the army, which is very dangerous because the army always is defending the unity of the country. Here we have a serious problem where the army itself is divided and the army is fighting each other. So if Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, General Fattah al-Burhan, the head of the state, is coming to us, is most welcome. We are all ears and we are all ready to give the good advice, the good support. Today we announced that an airline will be established from Port Sudan to Cairo. This is to help Sudanese to come to help Egyptians who are living in Sudan, and there are thousands of Egyptians there. Ministry of Irrigation, Ministry of Electricity, and Cairo University has a branch in Khartoum. So all these Egyptians also are looking to Cairo to help them. So it is a very dear country. It is a very important case to us, whether individuals or the government or our foreign policy.
Indeed. Sir, how actually do you view the impact of the crisis on the Sudanese people and its wider regional and international repercussions as well?
It is disastrous, by the way, on the Sudanese, because now we have tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands, who have no home or ceiling to cover them. They cannot even find the food enough to feed them. So the whole international community is trying to help. There is a representative of the United Nations there. Egypt is trying to do its best, either by hosting those who cannot live in Sudan or by helping those who are there by giving a hand by food and by medicine. Also, they need medicine. So we are trying to cover them, but I can imagine that life in Sudan is sort of impossible case. And God help us to make their life much easier.
Yeah. Sir, from your point of view, what other major players can actually intervene to stop the humanitarian crisis stemming from the conflict in Sudan?
All the neighbors of Sudan are playing very good role, whether it's Chad, Ethiopia even, and others. And I hope that, of course, because any border, it is a sort of a place where Sudanese can escape to, or where the help can enter to Sudan by its neighbor. So I do not neglect any partner or any neighbor of Sudan from giving the help. And I think Sudan is lucky in this point that all of us, we look to Sudan as a very important African country, and we cannot tolerate that Sudan continue in this war at all.
Of course. Sir, while Abdel Fattah al-Burhan vowed to fight the RSF to the end of the rebellion, actually the Gamal earlier released a statement detailing 10-point vision to end the war and build a new state. How do you see the scene in light of these statements by both al-Burhan and the Gamal?
It is good that we make each one of them spell out what he looks, how he looks to the problem, what are the conditions to come back to a peace solution. Yep. And we hope that by this, it is a sort of dialogue in public. Yep. And then Egypt can catch points of agreement between here and there. Then we go to the next step where we can go for a final agreement between all the powers of Sudan, especially of the Sudanese army. Then we can reach a peaceful solution, inshallah.
Yes, God's will. Sir, actually the Gamal's plan calls for civilian rule based on democratic norms and a single professional national army institution. How would you comment on this plan, and would that be applicable on the ground?
Once an eminent politician from Nigeria, which is the largest country in Africa as of population, he said that they are suffering from this tribe problem. Yeah. And whenever they have a tribe problem, they come to the army asking the generals to rule, because the army belongs to the one flag and the one country.
Of course.
So the army has a very important role here. In our case in Sudan, the army is divided also.
Yes.
So I see the point that some people are asking for a civilian ruler. It is one point, and it must be taken in consideration on the table of negotiations.
Yeah.
And let us see, because after all, at the end of the negotiations, you are getting the average of the whole positions of the whole parties who are quarreling in the field of Sudan.
Yeah. Sir, al-Burhan's latest trip to Egypt follows multiple diplomatic efforts to broker an end to the violence in Sudan, with series of U.S. and Saudi brokered ceasefires being systematically violated by both sides. Why have all the mediations efforts failed so far, Mr. Ambassador?
Yes, our first priority is to stop fighting within the cities and inside Sudan.
Of course.
Then we come to the army, which is really making a big mistake by fighting each other. So there are, of course, priorities how to stop this civil war. And then the army also, we divide it in stages. And each stage would lead to the other until we come to state of peace in the whole country. Then we start to talk about democracy or a civil ruler, or how the army will behave in the coming future.
Yes, sir. Foreign Minister Sameh Shukri took part in the first meeting of the ministerial mechanism of the Sudan's Neighbors Summit, which was held in Cairo on the 13th of July. Can you shed more light about the importance of that meeting, and did anything was achieved on the ground till this very moment?
Yes, we feel that it is our duty whenever
Of
we are
course.
requested and all the parties has a sort of confidence in the Egyptian interference.
Yeah.
Then we should, of course, do our duty and call on a meeting like that. And I am sure as a diplomat that our diplomacy is very active. It's well respected by all the parties in the whole African continent, especially in Sudan. I am one of the Egyptian diplomats who was accustomed to visit Khartoum plenty of times, and I know quite well how the Sudanese are looking to us and how dear they are to us. So it is normal what Sameh Shukri did, and I hope that day after another and continuing the dialogue, we shall reach a happy ending for all this story.
Hope so, sir. And finally, how do you evaluate the status of the Egyptian-African ties since President Sisi assumed office, and the president is actually paying great attention to the whole of the African continent, sir?
This is a wonderful story, and it needs a lot of time to talk about it. But as a diplomat who served in many African countries, I felt it that we were dealing in our foreign policy through our most important weapon, which is the embassies and ambassador, then up to the ministerial level. But we spent almost more than 10 or 20 years before the revolution of 2011 without the most important level, which is a presidency. Now we have a president who went to the far east in Tokyo, to the far west in Paris, north to New York, south in many African countries. And I don't know if I previously told you that he went to a country where I was non-resident ambassador. Why non-resident? Because the residence is impossible. Whenever I visited this country, the president himself, he was hosting me. No way to stay there. President Fattah al-Sisi went to Equatorial Guinea with the Arab constructor, and he built an embassy, and now we have an embassy with full staff. This shows you how we are keen to restore all our presence in Africa, especially the presence of the leadership and the president. And this is, I am quite sure, is appreciated from all the African countries.
Indeed, Ambassador Gamal Baioumy, former Assistant Foreign Minister, always a pleasure to listen to your precious input, sir. Thank you so much for being with us. And finally, Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune has hailed the collaboration between China and Algeria as essential to the socio-economic development of his country. The two countries have agreed to build 6,000 kilometers of railway lines across Algeria. The project aims to make the mining easier, to encourage trade and boost Algeria's economy.
Algeria and China have joined forces in a significant partnership to construct an expansive 6,000 kilometers of railway lines within the North African nation, a more lauded by Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune as pivotal in advancing his country's socio-economic progress. Earlier this month, Tebboune said in a regular interview with representatives of the national media that strengthening the railway sector is the best guarantee of development, stressing that their Chinese friends have agreed to this project, which will cover a distance of around 6,000 kilometers. The aim is to facilitate the exploration of mines, promote trade, and create economic vitality in Algeria. The ambitious railway project is part of the two countries' broader cooperation under the Belt and Road Initiative, the massive China proposed project to boost global trade and commerce by improving infrastructure and connectivity. A member of the Algerian parliament said the project, which is to be supported by Chinese technical know-how and construction expertise, will connect all cities and regions in Algeria and also pave the way for economic development in several African countries. Algerian economist Karim Allem also said he believes that the mega railway project will provide significant opportunities for economic growth and job creation in the country. Algerians have welcomed the announcement made by the president. President Tebboun's announcement came after his state visit to China last month. During his trip, the two countries signed more than a dozen cooperation agreements in various sectors, including airspace, agriculture, energy, railway, transportation, science, and technology.
Well, with that, our dear viewers, we come to the end of this edition of our program Africa Today, where we have been tackling the visit by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan to Egypt and the President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi meeting of the Sudanese leader. And that brings us to the end of this edition of our program. I'm Mahis Rabia signing off. Thanks for watching.